right, we got a packed agenda today. Welcome to the May Vulcan Operations Committee meeting. Like I said, we have a pretty packed agenda. Sandy's going to go over the Vulcan Off-Cycle Virtual Connectathon, and we have some project updates with some representation from the teams to be able to provide those updates and answer any questions. And as usual, a wrap up with any Q&A. So why don't we go ahead and get started? Next slide. Sandy, I hope you're on because I'm going to pass the baton to you. I don't see Sandy on.
No, Sandy yet? She's not on yet. I know she said she had a conflict, but she confirmed yesterday she could make it. I can move on to
Yeah, why don't we move on and we
Nancy.
can backtrack to Sandy if we need to.
Yeah.
Okay, don't look at the slides.
Yeah.
Chris, are you on? I don't see Chris on. Boy, we're 2 for 2 here.
Well, that's
All right,
unusual.
why don't we go ahead to the next one?
Okay, I'm here.
Filippo, I know you're here. I'll hand
Excellent.
it to you.
Thank you. So I'm here to give you a quick update on FHIR 2 OMOP version 1. The good news is the IG was published on Wednesday, April 29th. And as a reminder, is an informative type of IG, which means you can use it, but it's because it didn't have such robust structured components. That's why it had to go with that informative label. The team is working on trying to make the structure maps, more. I guess you might say beef up the structure maps. The other thing they're doing is they're adding the race and ethnicity extension as well, and they're adding more to it. And that other IG is going as STU, or standard for trial use, and we are aiming for September. But the IG 1.0 is already available. We are going to share with you some lessons learned from that project. And two of them came to mind. One of them had to do with the statement of work. I don't know how many of you know this, but HL7 uses a calendar year. So it's January through December. And what happened for our project, we were in between, right? We were towards the end of the year, and we went to January, but the contract wasn't looked at. So some of the tech leads that were doing work were working, but their contract expired, so they were continuing to work in trust, knowing that the contract would be renewed, which was renewed. But the lessons learned there was to include a reminder on our project management platform, which is monday.com. We have reminders 3 months before expiration. So the team comes together, looks at the outstanding work, if we need to extend it, if we need, sometimes there are some activities like it happened. We were doing ballot reconciliation. We couldn't finish. We knew we couldn't finish by the end of the year. So we said it's probably going to happen in January. We're going to complete this task. So we had some funds roll over into January. So all this discussion, thanks to the platform now, we have the reminders ahead of time, and we can plan ahead. And number two had to do with project milestones. HL7 also has their own gate processes. During the process, there was at least one task. I think I have to say, I thought it was the IG proposal, something that the team thought it was completed, but it was missing an approval. So what happened is they couldn't go to ballot essentially because they didn't get the approval necessary on a previous step. So similarly to the track on the top here, number one, what happened is we ended up adding more reminders on Monday.com on milestones. So not only now we list the milestone, but we list the notification for the milestones, so we can proactively look at what's coming and make sure we have, our approvals, our pre-meetings, or everybody is on the same page, and so we don't have these surprises where we think we're going to ballot and no, sorry, you're missing the approval. So that's what we wanted to share. We have more information about FHIR to OMOP 2 next. I believe is that was Chris Roeder, which was gonna tell us more about
And Filippo, actually, Sandy is now available, so maybe we could circle back to Sandy, and then once Chris joins, we could get back to that topic, if that works.
Yeah, perfect. So Sandy,
Sandy,
if you're
floor
here.
is yours.
Hey everybody, good to be back and see you guys again. I just wanted to give you a little update on the planning for the Vulcan Virtual Connectathon. This Connectathon will take place on July 7th and 8th, and we're going to run just sort of standard Eastern time hours for the kickoff and the track highlights. The kickoff will be 9 a.m. and on day one on Wednesday, and then the track highlights will be at 4 p.m. on Thursday, July 8th. Are those the right days? I'm just looking. It's actually Tuesday and Wednesday. I apologize. I put the wrong days on here. The dates are correct. It's Tuesday and Wednesday, not Wednesday and Thursday. So I've listed it two different ways here. Apologies for that. So at any rate, we're going to follow this sort of standard Eastern time hours for the kickoff and track highlights. But there are several international organizations that will be participating from Australia and Europe. So we're going to have some off-cycle meetings for sure, and we'll make sure that the full schedules are published through Confluence and that Zooms will be available and supported regardless of when those meetings happen. There is a Confluence site already set up for this Connectathon, and I'll drop the link to that in the chat as soon as I'm done here, but it's also available on these slides. If you just click it on this front page, you can see that. Registration is free. You can register by clicking the link in this slide, or you can click the registration link through the Confluence site as well. There will be some marketing going out on this later today, both an email and a social post will be coming from HL7 proper, and then Vulcan will promote it in the next few days as well to make sure that everybody's aware that it's open and anyone can participate. Can we go to the next slide, please? So there'll be 3 tracks at this Connectathon. Here you'll see our lovely track leads. So APIX, EPI, excuse me, and PQI will be led by Craig Anderson, and he's got all of the details of his track, and the kickoff call has been published to the Confluence site track page. Then FHIR to OMOP will again be led by Devere Gabriel, and she's been working with her work group to get them ready for this testing. And then scheduled activities will be led by Jeff Lowe. So we appreciate their support, and you can reach out to them if you have questions about specific tracks, or to me if you have any questions about the Connectathon at all. And again, I will drop the Confluence site link as well as the registration link in the chat.
Sandy, there was a question about time zones. Is that something that's already on that page?
So we'll publish the time zones on the Confluence page as we get the agenda together. We haven't published an agenda, but basically all we know is that at this point the plan is to do the kickoff at 9 a.m. Eastern on the first day, and then the wrap up at 4 p.m. Eastern on the second day.
Wonderful. Hopefully that helps.
Happy as it looks like Lucy says would be good to include the time zone. Oh, yeah. I will go back when I fix the days that I blundered there. I'll fix that so that it says the time zone there too. Thanks, Lucy.
Free registration. Can't beat that, guys.
Whoop, whoop. Tell your friends.
All right. Any other questions for the Connectathon? Feel free to put them in chat if you want to ask anything else. I don't see Chris on, unless Chris, there's a different name or phone number associated with your call on. If Chris is not on, I would suggest we switch over to the HL7 May Connectathon, Hugh and Nursey, if you want to provide an update.
Yep, sure. So, next slide. Just a quick reminder that the Connectathon happens this weekend in Rotterdam. So you can still register for it. It's never too late to join a Connectathon. This is an in-person event though, so it does mean you've got to get yourself to Rotterdam, which I'm sure is feasible. We've a number of tracks there. UDP is going through the process of checking the implementation guide against the content that we've actually got in examples. We're particularly keen that people bring their own protocol. We had some real success last time in getting a Japanese protocol and being able to push that through. We're also interested in people who've got tooling that fit around this. So if you can either find ways of getting a protocol loaded, or you can read the FHIR server and then present the protocol, those are all really good things to work at there. We've also got some other tracks there. Nancy, I assume you're going to talk about your track?
Sure. If you're finished, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Brian, are you also here by any chance?
Yeah, I'm
If
here.
you are, okay, please feel free to correct me or Rowan as needed. So yeah, in our case, we are trying to. So this is part of a Vulcan EBM related track. So the problem we're trying to solve is that because of the eligibility criteria is written as a text block, can we structure it using AI? And we're using the work done by UDP and EBM on structuring the profiles according to the work that's already been done. This is an important topic because not only is it important for Europe, but also it's actually using the work that Hugh and others have been doing in Vulcan UDP. So what's the stack that we're going to have on the day? We're going to use a stack of a project called ctdnglobal.org, where we've done the most of the structuring work. We've been working since on this particular topic. We've been working since February to make sure that we have something that's worth showing. Obviously, we'll use Brian Alper's FHIR, which is basically our way to do the quality check on how structuring is done, and that the JSON is accurately described as it is in FHIR. That is also described in a similar way in CTDN. Next slide, please. Then what are we trying to validate? So what are we trying to do? So one is the validation that does the AI understand how the structuring works in terms of scoring, and does it actually structure correctly? So we're trying to get above 80% in terms of accuracy, in terms of what we structure. Does the AI, in terms of relevance filtering, does the AI understand what parts of the eligibility criteria are relevant for structuring versus things that are not? And then ideally by the end of it, depending how many people are there, we'll get some sign off from the people who are participating on our table to confirm that the selections that we've done in the coded concepts are actually correct. So what we've asked people to do who are coming is bring a trial. Let's try to work on it together, and let's try to see how well it works. Who's on our table? For sure, it's next door to us is we have a Vulcan UDP, of course, so we're going to be collaborating together with each other. We have the IHI Ready is represented by a couple of people. It's a European project. CDISC is there sitting next door to us. I'm not sure if Philips Oncology is going to sit on our table, but they are sitting in the room, so we will try to see if we can find a way to connect with them. Here we had the gentleman called Rohit Sharma Philips in Boston, who was interested in what we were doing because in terms of precision medicine, they have a lot of data about the actual condition and the patient and so on, but they find it hard to read information from the clinical trials. So of course, if we have structured data, it's very interesting for them. So somehow we're going to see if we can do some collaboration if time allows it. And of course, the platform that we're on, CDDN, that's also on the table as well. That's it for me. Any questions?
No, see, that's exactly the sort of thing we've been looking at in the NIHR for the past 5 to 10 years. We
Perfect.
even were involved with the ICH-M11 project, which is about organizing the protocol so that it's less written and more searchable. And I always had the feeling that AI would come along and be able to do this. So we'll follow this with interest. I can't make Rotterdam, but I'm going to reach out to you for some of your materials post Rotterdam.
Please do.
Yeah.
And it's not as easy as we thought, imagined it would be. It's quite difficult to do. And
I
we
think
get the
this
same
is quite
problems.
it's quite difficult to do.
Yeah. No, but the thing is we hit the same roadblocks as we as experts do. So you come to an ambiguous statement, you have to talk to each other to figure out what is the meaning of it. So the question
Yeah.
is, the only difference is with AI, maybe you get there faster. And then by solving similar problems, can you teach it to say that, okay, if you have it in a in a cancer context, this is the way it was solved before, so maybe you can solve the next one. So the idea is to with iterations and training, you improve the accuracy. But again, we're still learning. So
Yeah.
but the point is to try to do it, even if it's difficult, to actually be there, trying to do it and stick with it, because it's that type of thing. You have to be maybe a bit tenacious, maybe just go the distance, and then eventually you get something that's useful.
I think my colleagues in the UK in the DigiTrials team will be interested as well, because we've used things like during COVID, if you got a positive COVID test, you were invited to a trial. So the ability to set a trap against a clinical record is there, but it's fairly coarse at the moment. So it's okay for um, big trials in the UK, which we can look through for factors, but it's less applicable for smaller trials that need specialist ability to go through. So I think this will be a real benefit.
Perfect. No, please get in touch afterwards. No worries. Good.
Right. In addition to the Vulcan UDP track and the AI-powered clinical trial eligibility criteria track, we also have an evidence-based medicine track. And one of the scenarios in that is to convert study protocol data, typically from the trial registry forms, clinicaltrials.gov or the European CTIS, to FHIR form. But with the IHI Ready pipeline with USDM content, there was a request to add a scenario in one of the three tracks to convert the USDM data, especially related to eligibility criteria, to the FHIR form. So we looked across things, and this kind of crosses multiple tracks, but we thought it best fit in with the transformation of clinical trial protocol data to FHIR form in the EBM track. And we've developed a USDM to fever converter to handle key parts of the data, especially the eligibility criteria. So that will also be hopefully all sitting together in something we can coordinate with the eligibility criteria track.
That's super too. One of the reasons I joined Vulcan, Brian, is to look at what kind of patient characteristic data we could have for a willingness to take part in clinical trials where you could mobilize your whole population. So I'd be really interested in that track, as well as how we indicate that I'd like to take part in a trial, even though I'm perfectly healthy and to be matched. So I think that's both of these things really point to the future.
Oh, and as you said, you're unable to make it to the Connectathon in Rotterdam, but we have a regular weekly meeting for the AI structured eligibility criteria working group that occurs on Mondays. I know it's 11 a.m. Eastern time, So depending on where you are, that might be about 4 p.m. I think on Monday afternoons.
Yeah, I might just I'll drop you a line, Brian, about that one. I'll be interested. We're building our own AI unit internally, and we're looking at the kinds of things we need to build a health research specific LLM for us in the UK. And I think this is also the sort of thing where we ought to be linking up. We've got a colleague from NHS England as well. Yeah, OMOP, because of OMOP is what we use for our what we call secure data environments, where we puddle great lumps of data together from the NHS. So I think the OMOP integration would be super useful as well.
Great, thank you. Next presenter.
Okay, Craig, passing it on to you for APIX.
Yeah, hi everyone. So we have two events coming up for APIX. So one, Sandy already talked about the Connectathon, so that'll be one showcase. And we are also working to set up a tech demo, a virtual tech demo on June 10th. And so what we have is a couple organizations, so Amgen, NNIT, and Data Nexus. They have systems, or proof of concept systems that show APIX in operation. So this will be a fantastic showcase to prove to everyone that this is real and you can actually do this. And we will actually be able to achieve what we've been talking about. Because we've been talking about real-time exchange of regulatory information, and some people have thought that was science fiction, and we're about to prove that it's far from science fiction. So the objectives just to demonstrate to stakeholders, so whether it's pharma companies, regulators, other software developers, raise awareness of the project. Because right now we've kind of deliberately kept things under the radar. So there are some people that word is starting to spread about the project, but we deliberately kept it on the radar just to get to this point, to mature the implementation guide and get things to a stable point, a little bit more mature point. But now we're at that point where we're pretty confident in our understanding of how this is going to work. And we have a couple proof of concepts. So now we're ready to start, getting the word out there and telling everybody under the sun about this to attract more feedback and get more developers and software companies involved in supporting this. So next slide. And so just to give you an overview of how this works. So right now in regulatory affairs, for basically every regulated product, whether it's drug, vet drug, device, you kind of have this batch approach where you collect all this data. And then actually my clinical trial colleagues will recognize this as well. You kind of gather all this information together in one big batch, and then you send it to the regulator in a zip file. Whether that's over a gateway, whether that's email, whatever the case may be, you send it to the regulator, they review information, they ask questions, and it's this hodgepodge way of communicating with the regulator. So for human drugs, it's one way, vet drugs, another way, medical devices, another way, one way for commercial drugs, another way for clinical development drugs. Sometimes you send them, the regulator, something through a secure portal, and then they send you emails back, with your asking questions for your proprietary information in email, and then you respond back in email or proprietary not proprietary, a secure system. So the idea is to stop all of that and replace all that with one common way of exchanging information that's modern, that's FHIR based, and based on APIs. So that way everything is secure, everything is fast, and it's the same way for everybody. And then the other key part of this is using the process of the binary document reference and task resource flow. So the idea is, instead of this batch approach, it's trending towards more of a microtransaction type approach, where you send the files for your regulatory activity to the regulator, to the FHIR server, as binaries. You create document references for each of those binaries. Then you create a task. And your task is your submission. So whether it's a market authorization, shelf life update, clinical trial application, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what product, doesn't matter what procedure, it's all just a task. And the task has an input and output, and the task tracks your inputs, which would be your submissions. So let's say in a clinical trial application, it would be your application form, your protocol, your IB, all of that. And because we're using binary, it can be JSON, it can be XML, it can be PDF, it could be whatever you want. And then the task is what keeps track of that activity, that regulatory activity throughout its stages. So I file something with the regulator, the status changes. The regulator validates it, the status changes. They send me an invoice, so they start a task. So now they have a child task. They send me a task. I pay the invoice. That task closes. So you have like one parent task that stays open for the whole procedure, and you have a bunch of child tasks that track all the activities. And at the end, you close that task, and the whole procedure ends with the regulator issuing a decision. And then the last piece of the puzzle is the subscriptions. So you'd have a subscription service that is attached to the FHIR server that can keep track of all these task updates. So anytime a task changes, you would subscribe to your regulatory activity, then you would get notice and say, hey, the regulator has updated the task. Here's what happened. Status went from X to Y. They asked a question, they sent you something, and then the company can go into the system and pull down whatever it is they need. Or likewise, the regulator can say, hey, you asked the company a question, they responded, and the subscription service would notify them. So we move from where we are now, which is quite archaic and choppy in how things are done, to have one modern way of exchanging data that's secure, that's fast. And we have not only that, but we have a modern way of tracking the activity that's going back and forth, down to Amazon shipping tracker type level of detail in terms of fine grained detail of what is happening in the regulatory procedure. So that's an overview, and that's what we'll show. We'll start to show at the demo event, and then we'll show more at the Connectathon, and then this will get more mature as we go.
Craig,
So,
I
back to you,
wonder
Mike.
with the recent news about the FDA real-time signal initiative, right, with the proof of concept for safety data that's being passed through for trials, how close we're getting to even what you're showing for that to become a reality. Because I think it's, as you have stated, I want to say everything's going to be real time, but at least segment it in a way that it's piecemeal versus one bulk situation. And, just seeing some of those other initiatives and how that plays in the space that you're working in as well.
Yeah, I would say we're on the doorstep of this happening, because this is not a technical problem anymore. The technical part is solved. This is just an implementation problem, and this is a change management problem. So this is another reason why we want to spread awareness, start to get aggressive with the communications and awareness now, is to start to get the tech vendors on board to support this and to deploy solutions, commercial solutions quickly. And then hopefully we can get the regulators going, adopting this quickly as well. The same thing with the companies too. Because this isn't new. I'm speaking to the choir here, but this technology isn't new. What's new is the application of it in these use cases. And I think, adverse event reporting, I think clinical trials, like anywhere where it has very high, there's a need for high turnaround, fast turnaround, and even smaller things like adverse events. We need something like this. Like these ECTD approach that we have now is way too much overhead, way too costly. We need something like this that's much lighter weight, much easier to deploy and manage.
Wonderful. I think there may be a question in chat if you want to follow up directly there. Chris, I see that you just joined.
I did.
We will, yes, wonderful. I think, Filippo, we can go back to
Go
the
backwards.
FHIR to OMOP. Thanks again to Craig for a wonderful update. Chris, we're going to hand it off to you.
Waiting for that slide. There we go. Yeah, so we're going to have a virtual connectathon in July to work on the IG. The basics of the FHIR to OMOP project are to take FHIR resources and apply structure maps as well as concept maps or concept mappings that are available from a terminology server through the translate function and convert those into OMOP rows for different tables over there. The intent of the IG is to describe all how to do that and to set up some infrastructure so you can set up different toolings to accomplish that task. Next slide, please. So, in this graph, we've got the basic idea that, you're translating the data, and there's two aspects to converting the data. One is to convert the concepts from different vocabularies that may be in the FHIR data into vocabularies that are available in the OMOP world. If you're not familiar with OMOP, the OMOP schema is not just a relational database schema of the tables, but it includes a giant vocabulary where a term in a particular vocabulary, say SNOMED, which would have an ID within SNOMED, has a different ID within the universe of OMOP. So you don't have to identify a term by the vocabulary ID or code system and the concept code, but a singular OMOP code ID, concept ID. And that's the concept translation that has to happen as well. So in this Connectathon, one of the things we want to look at is two ways of translating the terms into OMOP. One is to use an embedded concept maps in the IG and make sure that works. And the other is to make use of a terminology server. And if everything's going good, those will produce the same output. So here on the left column, we see the two different ways of doing terms. In the center, we do the structural mapping. And on the far right, we would have the OMOP rows. So that's the main goal of the Connectathon. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris.
Wonderful. And I think we had someone in chat talking about the need from going from FHIR to OMOP for some of their use cases. So this kind of fits in very well.
It's good to hear.
Any questions for Chris? All right. A lot of jumping around today. Apologies for that. I think it's now it's yours, Filippo.
Yeah. To the point of project status updates. During this time, we go over each project lightly to talk about the latest updates. If you have any questions, feel free to speak up. We're going to start with APIX. We heard Craig telling us a bit about APIX. This is a reminder of the testing event that Craig was mentioning, which is going to be on June 10th. He did mention that 3 vendors, Amgen, NNIT, and DNA Nexus. To add, I will add that the event should be available on the Vulcan website sometime this week. And we're also going to have a registration form, which you can fill out and to register. It's free for anybody who'd like to attend. And also the same track, APIX, will also be participating in the July Connectathon on July 7th and 8th. On FHIR to OMOP, as we mentioned earlier, version 1 of that IG was published as informative on April 29th. And the team is currently working on version 2 of that IG, which is aiming September 2026 for the ballot. And that track, as you heard from Chris, is also participating in the July Connectathon. Okay. Phenomics Exchange, we should have more updates this week. We're meeting with the team again. The way we left that off was the Shahim, who's the project lead for Phenomics Exchange, was taking care of the dispositions from the ballot tickets. And then we needed to follow up with CIC, which is the working group, to basically confirm that the dispositions are correct and they do the final approval before we consider this IG to be completed. And as a reminder, it's a 4-comment type of IG. So hopefully by next month, you'll hear that it's been completed. Next one, we have schedule of activities. They participated in the May ballot, which just closed on May 11th. Actually, today it's the first team meeting since that, and we're going to be looking at the tickets that were submitted. We have some tickets that came in through JIRA, through the typical process, HL7 process, but we also received more feedback through email. So we have to, we'll be looking at those as well. We have a link to the ballot tickets for anybody who's interested to look at the tickets closely. And schedule of activities will also be participating in the July Connectathon, and Jeff will be leading that. On UDP, similar to SOA, they also participated in the May ballot, and the team is also ready to start reconciling the ballot tickets. We also have a link to the ballot tickets for the team, so you can take a look at that. As Hugh talked to us earlier, they actually going to be in Rotterdam. We're going to have a small team there, and they're going to validate the AG against the email requirements. And there's also going to be some cross-track testing that we intend to do. And as a also reminder, we're meeting at the end of the month. We have our usual monthly community call, which is on Wednesday, May 27th at 10 a.m. And if you don't have the invite, feel free to reach out. But that same event is also published on our website. The way you get to it is you go to HL7Vulcan.org and go under our projects, click on UDP, and you'll see it at the bottom of the page under events. It's listed. And here is, we have some updates on EPI as well. We're currently updating the templates pages. The objective is to point to the repo for each of these templates instead of having the link all the files within the IG, because once the IG is published, we should not be updating the IG continuously. That's against HL7 rules. So we're trying to put them in a safe location so you can still reach the templates. We can still update these templates without having to update the IG itself. The team is also continuing the work on the EPI Type 4, and we typically talking about them every week when we meet. In fact, the next meeting is tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Eastern, if you're interested in participating. And the other update is they're also participating in the Vulcan Virtual Connectathon in July. And the other update I wanted to give was about adverse events. The project team, we were invited, and it started last week, to some NCI ONC meetings. They call it USDI plus immune-related adverse events use case. We met with them last week, and the Vulcan group gave sort of an introduction on an update on what Vulcan worked on when they developed the IG for adverse events. And we met again this week, and the group was kind of going over the use case and the requirements. I just wanted to have the Vulcan members be aware of this. If you have any interest into what's happening or like to look back at what we already have, perhaps there's a chance to either extend adverse events at Vulcan or collaborate with the ONC group. So if you have any questions about that or like to get involved, please let me know. And
yeah, Filippo, in the past for adverse event and other IGs I had, submitted those data elements as part of USCDI, USCDI Plus. The current gap in the process is we need volunteers to evaluate these policies that come out, or moments in time where they like to get feedback. USCDI, USCDI Plus is a great example of that, where we could feed in some of the FHIR IG content back into the loop for that organization. So if you'd like to volunteer, feel free to reach out either to myself or Filippo or Mariam, and we can get you started on that, because without volunteers to do that, it's very challenging. The other piece I wanted to highlight as well, I see some hands raised, I'll get to you in a second, is if you have ideas for projects, maybe you have something lingering that you want to accomplish, and Filippo, I'm sure you would be greatly appreciative of folks providing ideas, which may turn into use cases and go through the formal channels to end up being projects. If you have any of those, feel free to reach out as well. So with that, I'm going to go with the first hand that was raised. Mick?
Yeah, thanks for that. One of the key things we lack in the UK is we don't record in a way that's readable by patient EPR of who is on a trial. So we're trying to develop some of those links. Our systems stay completely apart from each other. So I'll be interested in some of the flags you throw up for adverse events, in how we could like power that across to the EPR, because it adds to patient safety. So we panic about privacy data, but really you're adding to patient safety if we know that someone is on a trial, how those event reporting just might go across, and what level we'd need to do. So I'm really interested in that thread.
And are you interested mostly on the clinical trial aspects, so the clinical research, or clinical care as well? It was a bit of both.
There's both there, Filippo, and it's because our systems stay completely independent. We miss out on patient safety for adverse events. So if I walk into a pharmacy with a runny nose and I need this particular steroid, which may clash with the trial drug, or I've got a rash where I just want some cream, but it's actually the trial, the pharmacist, the GP, the caregiver, the hospital don't know I'm actually on a trial. So once we make that link, then adverse event reporting in whatever form, albeit even if it's just a flag to dig deeper, would be a major increase and should provide a little bit more reassurance to the trial participant.
That's good. Thank you. I don't know if anybody knows, everyone knows this, but when adverse events was built, team aim was mostly on the clinical research aspect. With that said, in fact, Brett, who was the technical lead, during the conversation with NCI, they were also looking at the clinical care aspect. But because most of the fields are the same, he's saying, well, it's the same field, so it's applicable. So it's not like they're completely separate. But as Mike was saying, if there is aspects that we need to like extend, if there's new use cases, it's good to know, because we need, your expertise. We need volunteers to help us, go through this and pull it together so we can make the AG more, up to standards and better for the community. So we do need that feedback. We appreciate it, and we also, again, love to extend our welcome if you willing to help us, get to that next level. That'd be great.
And by the way, those IGs were bifurcated between research and care, and they were supported by different working groups to be able to facilitate them. And keep in mind, it's like terminology is much different between the two environments. Bedside events versus the ones that you were explaining, potentially. I want to get to Craig. I think you had your hand up second.
Yeah, just a note. So in Filippo's updates, he mentioned there's a bullet there on the API and API type 4. I just want to flag that for the team and maybe something to consider for other projects. So what that is, very quickly, I'll put a link to the page in the IG that describes what that is. That is the most advanced form of drug labeling structured with FHIR that we can think of. It basically starts the transition to go from a labeled document to basically a graph of data. So I would just recommend maybe the team take a look and let us know what you think. I think there is a very close relationship between how a protocol and investigator brochures are structured in the label or the drug label. So something the other teams might want to consider is just to take a look at that and see what direction we're going with that. And you might be able to apply some of that to the protocol or the roadmap for the protocol, and maybe some of the other regulatory documents to come. So just want to flag that. That's it may seem unassuming, but we think it's a pretty big deal. And there's some excitement amongst the regulators about where this is headed. So thanks.
Yep. And I know you guys spent a lot of time on that, right? All these new resources. And I think Rick is also on. So kudos to you guys for doing that.
And yeah, thanks, Craig. I'll include the link on the slides. So when I share them, people will also see that link on the slides.
Bev, I think that's you. You had your hand raised. Oh, and went back down. Anybody else?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I hear I'm talking away and I'm on mute. I was just saying, building off of what Craig was just bringing up, I think one of the things is that, we tend to, think a lot in terms of everything at the bedside and around the patient. But, the domino effect of that is pharma. It's a big transformation for pharma as well. So I think looking at AE, what we're doing with API on FHIR, there's big crossover, in terms of being able to not only submit into health authorities for label, but coupled up with clinical trial and then hybrid trial with real world data and real world data. So those buckets, and there's also for each of those buckets, I think a way that we could demonstrate how none of these standards live in as silos, but where we need the translation of one standard to another. I know we're pulling together some information on that we were talking about posting on the API on FHIR Confluence pages, but I think it's something we could start leveraging for AE and UDP, just to see how these things dovetail as well.
Bev, you bring up a great point, and I remember it must have been a year and a half ago, is providing the GPS to all these different FHIR IGs and how they work together. I think that's a big gap for industry to understand that.
Yeah. I mean, even internally, one of the things that I've done is shown how for new label expansion, how, in the very near future, it could be done through FHIR, even native FHIR author. And then also, what does that look like for clinical trial? Because when you think about it, data is gathered via FHIR. We bring it in, it goes through CRO, et cetera, or third parties. Then, we bring it into CDISC for submission. But is that always going to be true? There's probably going to be a FHIR output for submission and then CDISC for the bigger bulk data. And in real world data, right? We bring it starts at point of care through FHIR, gets to the data aggregators. We've been trying to do OMOP, so we could do apples to apples analysis. That output will probably be a FHIR output. And those might be some gaps we have, as we think through this. And then you got that hybrid trial situation where we have data linkage. It brings up new questions for regulators as well. How long do we keep that data? Is it snapshots and real world data? That data doesn't persist. So there's a lot of transformation, which is a good thing.
Hybridized data strategy. Oh boy,
Yes.
I remember those days.
It's real. It's happening. Yep. Anyway, just yeah, I think a GPS is a great way of putting it, Mike.
So I don't know, Filippo, if that's a true project in itself, but some kind of reference documentation at the very least covering Vulcan products, but then where the dotted lines go to other products. And I don't know if folks on the call would think that is helpful for at least for us to tease out, because I'll tell you this, I don't know how everything relates to one another myself in most cases.
Mhm.
So just to put it out there for everyone.
I think it's a great idea. I've seen in the past some like older slides from Vulcan that describe the different IGs and how they kind of related to each other. And we could probably start with that, trying to get our AGs to in the right place and explain how they interact with each other, and then perhaps we can expand from there with the other IGs from that are available in HL7 and how they are connected. Because yeah, sometimes too, right, you get somebody taps you on the shoulder. Hey, did you know about this other AG from this other accelerator? And like, oh no, I had no idea, and they work in a similar space. So it would be good to have that mapped, both internally and for the whole community to know where sort of everything fits. I agree.
Well, we got some thumbs up. We know who to tap as volunteers for that.
Oh boy, now they're gonna disappear, the thumbs.
I'm just kidding.
Uh-oh, is that what thumbs up means? Yeah.
Indirectly. If there's any other questions, feel free to follow up. I did put the link to the Vulcan project dashboard as well. Feel free to go there. You'll see everything that Filippo has put together very nicely for any updates and things like that. All right. If there's no other questions, I think that wraps up our. Oh, Mick, you got it just in time. Go ahead.
Sorry, Mike. Just to let the group know that in the UK, there's a new organization called Chassis, which is a group of, I'll put it in the chat, standards bodies in the UK. I've already reached out to them and made a suggestion that Vulcan's part of that, or at least they are aware of Vulcan. So I'll handle that from our end and see what the deal is.
Wonderful. Always get to partner with different organizations on the same journey.
Yeah, I think it might be just a talking shop, Mike, but it's good to talk.
Talking's good.
Yeah, good to be informed.
Wonderful. Thanks, Mick. All right. See you guys next month. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.